Hi there, I'm Kirsten Neese, the Director of Marketing for Cornerstone Homes, and welcome to Tuesdays at 2. Today we're out at Chickahominy Falls in the barn, and with me today I have Michelle Newcomb. She's a Community Manager for Cornerstone Homes and Village Management Group. Michelle, thanks for coming out and being with me today and sharing a little bit about what you do for Cornerstone Homes. What's your role?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I have been with Cornerstone Homes Village Management Group for 5 years this December. My responsibility as community manager is to oversee the day-to-day functions of the various associations, whether it be a condominium or an HOA, and I report directly to the boards of those associations. I do work under the title as community manager for Village Management Group, but it's really an entity of Cornerstone Homes. Historically, Cornerstone Homes will self-manage their associations from start to turnover point, and there are lots of benefits to that, which we'll go into a little bit later, I think. But yeah, managing the day-to-day operations, there's, like I said, some benefits to being in the office. I'm there with Cornerstone Homes. I'm there with the Crescent Group, which is our land development entity. So unlike some other community managers who are third party in the early stages, it's nice because I'm sort of in the know. So I have direct access to everybody that's available, all of our team members. So I can historically get some answers to problems quicker than others.
And liaise really easily between
Yes.
all the different parties and fulfill your responsibilities for the HOA or Condo Association.
Correct, yeah.
Well, some say you have the hardest job in the company because you not only, have all of us in the office that you work closely with, but you manage, and on any given day, you could receive emails from up to and over 150 different residents. So tell us and walk us through what a typical day looks like for you.
So some of the days, I don't like to use the word difficult. Some of the days can be challenging. Fortunately, I would like to mention I do have great support from my team members at Village Management Group who support me. Lisa Hoover is responsible for a lot of the accounts payable. She's the one that you would speak to if you had issues regarding your HOA payments. And then, of course, our controller, Suzanne Copley, who oversees the financials, helps with budget preparation and sort of oversees all the accounts payable for all of the associations and the condominium. So I have a great support group. Having said that, yes, the days can be rather long, depending on the seasons that we're in. Right now, my days seem to be filled with irrigation issues and what's running and what's not running. In the wintertime, that shifts to snow and ice removal, and it varies.
It just varies.
It varies.
It depends, I guess, on the stage of the construction and kind of what's going on. And
Absolutely.
Once residents move in, it's, the community doesn't just look beautiful right away.
Right.
It takes time for that to develop and create. And, we've been doing this for 20 years. And I've recently gone back to some of our other communities that we have finalized and, moved out of, and they're just as beautiful as we envisioned them when we started. And I think that's a trademark that we're really proud of,
right?
Because we do develop and build our own communities,
right?
So your job is a little bit tricky because it's coordinating during the construction phase all of the amenities and all of the common element within each.
That seems to be one of the biggest obstacles, I think, for me, and I think for homeowners who are coming from a well-established neighborhood where I think typically with our homeowners that are coming to our communities have been in associations or been in neighborhoods that have been built out now for years.
Right.
So they're all lush and beautiful, and they don't have dumpsters and tractor trailers rolling through their streets at all hours of the night and day, and they are under active construction.
Right.
So it's hard for people, I think, to bridge that gap. So we do try to lessen the impact of our homeowners and keep things running as smoothly as possible.
And keep them informed. I mean, a
Yes.
lot of what you do is just messaging out to the residents and helping them, understand hey, what's going on? Oh, we're having the roads paved this week. Like, make sure to stay and be out of the roadways and be careful and cautious because of this, that, or the other, right?
Exactly.
So our properties are all managed and under ownership either of an HOA or a COA, a condo association, or a homeowners association. Can you go into that a little bit and describe what the differences are?
Sure. The biggest difference between an HOA or a homeowners association and a condominium is the scope of ownership. Members of a condominium have joint ownership, or interest rather, in the buildings and the common areas, versus a homeowners association where the lots are privately owned by the homeowners.
Okay.
Now, having said that, they operate very similarly. A lot of the rules and regulations you'll find often mimic each other. Architectural change requests, for example, are required in all of our communities, whether it be a condo or an HOA. Any modification to the exterior of your property, you want to plant something, or you want to alter a flower bed, or you would like to put up a fence, or you want to add a 3-season sunroom. We have a form that's available in the office. It's also available to you in your welcome packets, should be in there, and that requires review by the review board. And those boards are established early on in the stages of the organizing the association.
So let's talk about the boards a little bit and how those are set up. At the onset, when all the legal documents are put together in the disclosure packet and the actual HOA or COA, condo association, is actually formed legally, there's a board. Who's on that board, and what does that look like?
So in the early stages of developing any of our communities, whether it be Cornerstone or any other builder in the state of Virginia, we go through a very lengthy process to register those condominiums and register the homeowners associations. There are governing documents, rules and regulations, bylaws, declaration, that basically run or define how those associations and condominiums are organized and how they function. The developer and declarant is responsible for assigning those board members. Historically, in our communities, those board members consist of the declarant and developer himself. Roger will hold a position on the board. Frank Lackman, who is president of Cornerstone Homes, will hold a position, as well as Mike Lang, who is vice president of the Crescent Group, which is our land development entity.
Great. And so then those boards stay in place until about 75% occupancy or home ownership within the community, right?
Correct. Once Cornerstone Homes conveys, means sold and closed, how we define conveyed, 75% of the total units that were registered or formed in that homeowners association, that we don't have to have the turnover to a resident elected board done at the 75%. That's basically our starting point where we begin the transition process.
Okay.
And there is a whole gamut of, like I said,
and that depends
rules
on
and
each
regulations.
community.
Correct.
It varies basically.
It does vary.
But that's kind of your starting point for when you're going to start
based
to
on
make
the
that
number of
change.
units, right?
So we're getting close to that in the Cove.
We are getting very close to that in the Cove. This year is going to be a little bit different. Obviously, everyone's aware, if you're coming from an HOA or a condominium, you know that we have annual association meetings, annual homeowners association meetings. And because of the recent pandemic, we are navigating sort of in uncharted waters right now. These meetings will be held in a completely different platform. They more than likely will be held virtual. So we are not only learning ourselves how we're going to manage this, but then we'll be talking to and communicating with our residents about how all this is really going to work, because it's going to be different for everybody.
Right. And so then you just sort of, and you have a lot of communication with the neighbors in the community. And so you can start to identify who the natural leaders are within the community and who might be good. And what are some of the positions that are resident held positions?
We'll have a president, a vice president, then we have members at large. We, in addition to the board, and prior to actually the board, we have committees,
Okay.
various committees that are chartered historically earlier before the transition begins. We like to do that. Sometimes that doesn't always happen, but we like to try to engage the residents as
So
early
like the
on as
social
possible.
committee starts pretty early up at
Right.
Barley Woods. That's fully in place, and
We'll have a social committee, which is obviously very active. You're active. You and Caroline both are really active in orchestrating and navigating those folks and how that works. So yeah, back to how you can apply to be on those committees or be on the board. The board information, I said, will be, it's its own sort of movement, and those messages are sent out prior to when we're ready to pull the trigger on the 75% and sold and closed and transitioning to resident elected board. But the committees are chartered through the board.
Okay.
And they have statements, mission statements about what their goals are. Usually typically talks about what their responsibility is, keeping in mind that these committees under a developer and declarant board, even when we transition to a resident elected board, the committee's responsibility is to report directly to the board of directors. They don't really operate independently.
Right.
All of these filter up to the board of directors, whoever that may be in the position and the time.
And the job of the board of directors is just to go by what's in the declaration and all the documents, the legal documents, and just
Right.
make sure that the HOA or the condo association stays within the terms of
Is operating like it should.
Right.
Is being governed the way that it should.
Right. So there's difference. We always talk about a social club versus a social committee, or and then you have green and grounds, you have treasurer, you have so all these different the committees, the official group that's part of the legal entity. A club can be anything. So we have lots of different clubs like
Gardening club
or whatever. Those are separate and don't have to fall under the legal.
Right. They're not actually they're providing a service to the residents, but they're not really a function of the association or the condominium like a buildings and grounds committee would be, or your finance committee.
Right.
Or we have a covenants committee. So they are actually performing a function that's governed by those documents.
Great. Well, this has been super informative for everybody, I have to imagine, and great. I learned some new things today as well. It's really been great sitting here with you this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
And appreciate your sharing your expansive knowledge of the homeowners association and the condo association. It's been really great having you. So thanks so much.
Sure, glad I could help.